"You saved my daughter, now my heart is yours," the Apache girl whispered to the rancher. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the distant mountains, painting the wide open plains with shades of gold and amber. The air was warm but carried a hint of the evening chill that always came with desert nights. On this vast land, stretching for miles with rolling hills and scattered clusters of sagebrush, a lone rancher moved steadily among his cattle. His boots crunched softly against the dry earth, and the rhythmic sound of his spurred steps mixed with the occasional lowing of the cows. Life on the ranch had always been hard, and the rancher had learned to trust the land and his instincts. He knew the weather, the animals, and even the quiet sounds of nature that most people overlooked. Today, however, something unusual caught his attention. A thin wisp of smoke rose in the distance, curling into the clear blue sky. At first he thought it might be from a small campfire or perhaps a controlled burn, which ranchers sometimes did to clear brush. But as he focused, he realized the smoke was darker, thicker, and moving erratically. His heart skipped a beat. Fires on the plains were dangerous, often unpredictable, and deadly. Without a second thought, he mounted his horse and urged it forward, following the trail of smoke as it twisted across the hills. Each step of the horse brought him closer to what he feared might be a disaster. As he rode, he noticed the cabin, a small, sturdy structure made of logs and rough-hewn wood, partially surrounded by flames. The fire licked hungrily at the edges of the roof, and black smoke billowed out, carrying the smell of burning wood and ash. He could hear the crackle of the flames and the frantic shouts of someone calling for help. The rancher didn't hesitate. He guided his horse through a safe path toward the cabin, his mind focused entirely on the people inside. When he arrived, he saw them clearly for the first time. A young Apache girl, no older than 12, and her father, both trapped by the fire that had grown faster than they could control. The girl's eyes were wide with fear, her small hands clutching her father's arm, while the father's face was streaked with soot and sweat. They were too far from safety to escape on their own, and the fire was already encroaching on the cabin walls. The rancher dismounted quickly, tying his horse to a nearby tree. He ran toward the cabin, calling out to the pair to stay calm. His voice was steady, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the fire. The father shouted back, warning him about the flames, but the rancher ignored the danger, focusing on getting them out. He instructed the girl to grab her father's hand and follow him. With a strength born of urgency and determination, he led them through a narrow gap between the flames, stepping carefully over burning embers. Smoke stung their eyes and made it difficult to breathe, but the rancher's calm, steady presence gave them courage. Step by step, he guided them across the scorched earth, pulling the girl out of the way of falling branches and dodging patches of fire that threatened to trap them. At one point, a wall of flames threatened to cut off their escape, and the rancher quickly used his jacket to beat back the smaller fires, creating a safe path. His heart pounded with adrenaline, but he didn't let fear show. He knew that panic could be more dangerous than the flames themselves. Finally, they reached a small clearing, a safe distance from the burning cabin. The girl collapsed onto the ground, coughing and shaking, while her father knelt beside her, his hands trembling. The rancher knelt too, offering water from a canteen he carried, and reassured them both that they were safe now. The relief in their eyes was evident, though the fear still lingered. The rancher's actions had saved their lives, and the bond of gratitude and trust began in that moment, silent but undeniable. After the immediate danger had passed, the rancher surveyed the cabin from a distance. Smoke still rose in thin streams, and the fire had left blackened marks across the walls. Though much of the structure was damaged, it was still standing. He knew that rebuilding would be hard, but that was a challenge for later. Right now, the priority was the people he had saved. The girl's father, exhausted but deeply grateful, thanked him repeatedly, his voice thick with emotion. The girl looked up at the rancher, her eyes wide, not just with fear anymore, but with a spark of something else: admiration, curiosity, and a budding trust. The rancher stayed with them until the flames were fully under control and the local fire wardens arrived. He helped gather some of their belongings from the parts of the cabin that were still safe, carrying what he could to prevent further loss. All the while, he spoke gently to the girl, trying to keep her calm, asking her about her favorite stories, her daily life, anything that could distract her from the shock she had just endured. The girl, slowly regaining her composure, began to answer him, her voice hesitant at first, but then steadier as she realized he meant no harm. As the sun set fully behind the mountains, casting the plains in soft shades of twilight, the rancher helped the father and daughter make their way to a small temporary shelter he had set up nearby. It was simple, but it offered protection and comfort for the night. He gave them blankets, water, and food, making sure they were as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. The girl's father kept thanking him, but the rancher merely nodded, saying that anyone would have done the same. Inside, he carried a quiet pride, not from heroism, but from knowing he had done the right thing, saving lives in a moment of real danger. That night, as the wind whispered across the plains and the last embers of the fire cooled, the rancher watched the girl and her father from a distance. They were sitting together wrapped in blankets, quietly talking. The girl occasionally glanced up at him, a small smile breaking through the fatigue on her face. Though she was still young and cautious, something unspoken had passed between them. A connection formed in the fire, a bond of trust and gratitude. The rancher felt it too, a quiet sense that this encounter was not just a random act of bravery, but the beginning of something that could grow into a deep and meaningful relationship. The plains were quiet again, save for the soft sounds of the evening: crickets chirping, the distant call of a coyote, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the grasses. Gab! The rancher knew that life on the plains was unpredictable, full of challenges and dangers, but also full of opportunities for courage, kindness, and connection. As he watched the girl and her father, he realized that sometimes the most important moments in life came unexpectedly, in situations that tested your strength, your heart, and your willingness to act. That night, the rancher returned to his own small cabin on the plains, his thoughts lingering on the events of the day. He reflected on the courage it had taken to face the fire, on the relief of seeing them safe, and on the quiet bond that had formed in the midst of chaos. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a story that would shape not only the lives of the girl and her father, but his own as well. In saving them, he had opened a door to friendship, trust, and perhaps something even more profound: connections that could last a lifetime. The fire was gone, but its impact lingered. In the glow of the fading sunset, the plains seemed to hold a new promise, one born of bravery, compassion, and the quiet heroism of a man who had simply done what he knew was right. And in that moment, as night settled over the land, the rancher realized that sometimes life's most meaningful moments came in the unlikeliest of ways, through fire, danger, and the simple act of reaching out a helping hand. After the terrifying fire, life on the plains slowly returned to a quiet rhythm. The rancher visited the small shelter where the Apache girl and her father were staying, bringing supplies and checking on their well-being. Each visit became a small ritual, a bridge between two lives that had collided in the heat of danger. The father, a stoic man with deep respect for the land, often thanked the rancher, his voice heavy with gratitude. But it was the girl who intrigued him the most. She was quiet at first, her eyes wide and observant, as if trying to understand who this man was who had risked his life to save them. There was a spark in her gaze, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and something he could not yet name. The rancher began helping the family rebuild their damaged cabin. The walls had been scorched and many of their belongings destroyed, but the father was determined to restore what they had lost. The rancher offered his knowledge and labor freely, teaching them how to safely clear the burnt areas and strengthen the cabin against future danger. He showed them how to stack wood properly, reinforce the roof, and repair fences that had been damaged in the fire. The girl watched closely, sometimes assisting by handing him nails, holding tools, or simply observing quietly, absorbing every detail. Her fascination grew each day, not only with the work itself, but with the calm, steady presence of the man who had saved her life. At first, the girl spoke little, unsure of how to communicate with someone so different from her family. She listened to his voice, the gentle way he explained things, and gradually began asking questions. "Why did you come?" she asked one afternoon, as the rancher worked to repair a broken fence. His answer was simple, almost shy. "Because it was the right thing to do. Anyone in my place would have done the same." The girl nodded slowly, absorbing the words. It was not just the act of saving them that impressed her, but the humility and kindness that accompanied it. She realized that true courage was not about showing off, but about helping when it mattered most. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, their bond grew stronger. The rancher would spend hours helping the father tend the land, checking water sources, repairing fences, and guiding the cattle. The girl often joined them, learning how to ride a horse safely, how to recognize signs of danger in the wild, and how to care for animals. At first, she was clumsy, fumbling with reins or struggling to lift heavy tools, but she never gave up. The rancher encouraged her with gentle patience, never criticizing, only guiding. Slowly, she grew confident, her laughter ringing out across the plains when she managed a new skill successfully. The rancher also learned from the girl. She taught him about the plants and herbs that grew wild in the area, explaining which ones could be used for food or medicine. She shared stories from her ancestors, tales of courage, survival, and respect for nature. The rancher listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge and the way she viewed the world. He began to see the land not just as property or a place to work, but as a living, breathing environment full of lessons and hidden wisdom. In this exchange of knowledge, they found a shared respect for each other, a bridge between their different worlds. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together by a small fire near the cabin. The sky above was a tapestry of stars, clear and brilliant in the cool night air. The girl spoke softly about her dreams, her hopes, and the stories her mother had once told her before she passed away. The rancher listened, offering gentle words of encouragement. He shared a few stories of his own childhood, of growing up on the plains, of learning to ride horses and care for cattle. It was a moment of quiet connection, a meeting of hearts without words of love yet, but with a sense of understanding that went deeper than simple friendship. The father noticed the bond forming between his daughter and the rancher. At first, he was cautious, protective, and unsure if he should allow this connection to grow, but he could see the respect and care in the rancher's eyes, the way he treated his daughter not as someone to be managed, but as a person with her own thoughts, strengths, and feelings. Slowly, he began to trust him, realizing that the rancher was someone who had not only saved their lives but had become a steadfast presence they could rely on. The girl began to spend more time with the rancher. She enjoyed riding the horses across the open fields, feeling the wind against her face, and learning to balance herself confidently in the saddle. She laughed freely, something she had not done since the fire, and the sound brought a sense of warmth to the rancher's heart. He found himself looking forward to these moments, noticing her smiles, The way her eyes lit up when she learned something new, and the quiet determination she showed in overcoming challenges. Each day brought them closer, though neither spoke of it as anything more than friendship yet. One afternoon, while checking a water source for the cattle, the rancher noticed the girl struggling to lift a bucket from the well. He walked over, gently taking the bucket from her hands and showing her a technique that made it easier. She watched intently, following his instructions carefully. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but full of gratitude. He nodded, smiling, and in that simple exchange, a deep connection was formed. It was not a grand gesture, but a series of small, meaningful moments that built trust and affection. The rancher also noticed her growing confidence and independence. The girl began to take initiative in helping with chores around the cabin, feeding animals, gathering firewood, and tending a small garden her father had planted. She would run ahead, checking fences and making sure everything was in order, her eyes bright with pride at her accomplishments. The rancher encouraged her efforts, praising her determination and skill. Slowly, she began to see herself not just as a child in need of protection, but as someone capable, strong, and brave. At night, they would often sit together by the fire, sharing stories and dreams. The rancher learned about the girl's hopes for the future, her desire to explore the world beyond the plains, and her admiration for the courage her father had shown over the years. She listened to his stories of ranch life, of challenges he had faced and overcome, and the quiet satisfaction he found in hard work and simplicity. In these conversations, they found a rhythm, a companionship that was gentle, steady, and comforting. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the rancher and the Apache girl grew deeper, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and quiet acts of kindness. He was not just a protector or a helper. He became a teacher, a friend, and a figure of trust. She was not just a girl he had saved. She became a companion, a source of wonder, and someone who brought light and laughter into his life. The father noticed the subtle changes in his daughter, her confidence, her smiles, and her willingness to try new things. He began to trust the rancher completely, allowing them to spend more time together without interference. He could see that the girl's admiration for the rancher was sincere, rooted in gratitude, respect, and an emerging sense of friendship that was rare and precious. He felt a quiet relief, knowing that his daughter had found someone trustworthy, someone who could guide her while allowing her to grow in her own way. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, the rancher and the girl sat on a fallen log, watching the cattle graze in the distance. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and the distant promise of rain. The girl leaned against him slightly, sharing her thoughts about the day and the chores they had completed together. The rancher listened, smiling quietly, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not expected. It was a gentle, tender moment, unspoken but full of meaning, a bond forged through shared hardship, trust, and respect. In the days that followed, the girl began to trust the rancher completely. She would run to greet him when he arrived, eager to show what she had learned or accomplished. She began to confide in him, sharing her fears, her joys, and her dreams. The rancher, in turn, shared his knowledge and experiences, teaching her about the land, the animals, and the values of patience, courage, and kindness. Together, they created a small world of safety, learning, and connection, a world that felt as wide and free as the plains around them. Through all of this, the rancher never sought recognition or reward. He had acted out of instinct, compassion, and a sense of duty. But as he watched the girl grow stronger, more confident, and happier, he realized that the fire that had brought them together had also created something new. a friendship that could transform both of their lives. He had saved her life once, but now, through daily acts of care, teaching, and companionship, he was helping her find strength within herself. By the end of the season, the cabin was repaired, the land tended, and the family safe and secure. But the connection between the rancher and the girl had grown stronger than ever. It was no longer just about gratitude for saving lives. It was about mutual respect, admiration, and the quiet beginnings of affection. The rancher had become a part of their daily life, and the girl had become a part of his. The bond formed through fire, fear, and shared effort had taken root and promised to grow in ways neither could yet imagine. The plains stretched endlessly around them, golden in the fading light of the afternoon, and the wind carried with it a sense of possibility. Life was unpredictable, full of dangers and surprises, but also full of moments of connection, courage, and love. In these moments, the rancher and the girl discovered something profound, that true bonds were built not in grand gestures alone, but in daily acts of care, respect, and shared experience. And as they sat together watching the sun sink behind the mountains, both of them knew, without speaking, that their lives had been changed forever by that first moment of bravery in the fire. The days grew longer and warmer as spring slowly gave way to summer on the wide plains. The rancher and the Apache girl had settled into a rhythm that was comfortable and familiar, yet full of small discoveries and new experiences. Each morning the rancher would rise early to check on the cattle, and the girl would follow, eager to assist and to learn. At first, she had only observed, carefully noting the way he guided the animals, adjusted the fences, or moved through the fields with practiced ease. But now she began to take initiative, helping him carry water, repair broken boards, and check on the farthest corners of the ranch. Her confidence grew with each task, and the rancher could not help but admire her determination. The bond between them deepened in subtle ways. While the work was demanding, they found joy in the small moments, the sound of laughter echoing across the fields, the quiet of an early morning broken only by birdsong, or the gentle touch of a hand when passing a bucket of water. The girl began to share her thoughts and ideas more freely, pointing out which plants could be harvested or how the cattle responded to certain commands. The rancher listened carefully, valuing her input. He realized that she possessed a natural wisdom and understanding of the land that even he had not noticed before. In these shared experiences, their connection grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and a sense of partnership. One afternoon, the rancher decided to teach the girl how to ride a horse properly. She had ridden before, but her technique was unrefined, and she often struggled to control the animal when it moved too quickly. The rancher approached her with patience, explaining how to sit, hold the reins, and anticipate the horse's movements. At first, she wobbled and stumbled, her small hands gripping tightly as the horse moved nervously beneath her. But the rancher stayed close, guiding her, offering encouragement, and never once showing frustration. Slowly, she began to find her balance, her movements growing steadier and more confident. By the end of the lesson, she was riding with ease across the open plains, her laughter ringing out freely. The rancher felt a quiet pride swell within him, not because of his own skill, but because of the girl's determination and growth. The girl, in turn, shared her own knowledge with the rancher. She taught him about the herbs and plants that grew wild on the plains, explaining which ones could be used for medicine or food. She spoke of their names, their uses, and the traditions behind them, stories handed down by her ancestors. The rancher listened intently, fascinated by her insights and the way she connected with the land. He realized that learning from her was as valuable as teaching her. In those moments, they were equals, sharing knowledge and understanding, bridging the gap between two different worlds. Evenings became a time for storytelling and quiet reflection. The girl would sit beside the rancher near a small fire, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames, and recount tales she had heard from her mother and grandmother. She spoke of brave hunters, wise elders, and the spirits of the land that guided her people. The rancher, in turn, shared stories of his own life on the ranch, of the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned through years of hard work and perseverance. They listened to each other with genuine interest and respect, finding in these stories a deeper understanding of one another. Over time, their companionship began to take on a new, unspoken quality. The rancher noticed small changes in himself, the way he anticipated her thoughts, the way he looked forward to their time together, and the warmth he felt when she smiled. The girl, too, felt a growing admiration for him, a deep respect for his courage, patience, and kindness. Neither of them spoke of it as love yet, but the emotions were there, quietly growing beneath the surface, shaped by shared experiences, trust, and mutual care. The father watched these developments with careful attention. At first he had been wary, concerned that his daughter might be too young to understand such feelings, or that the bond could bring complications. But as he observed the rancher, he saw the integrity and sincerity in his actions. The rancher treated his daughter with respect, never condescending, never controlling, always encouraging her independence. Slowly, the father's caution turned into quiet approval. He realized that the rancher had become not only a protector and teacher, but also a friend whose presence enriched his daughter's life. One particularly hot afternoon, the rancher and the girl took the horses to a distant part of the ranch to inspect a water source. The path was rough, filled with loose stones and prickly bushes, but they moved steadily, enjoying the freedom of the open land. Along the way, the girl pointed out a cluster of wildflowers she had found, explaining how their petals could be used to make a soothing tea for minor ailments. The rancher listened attentively, impressed by her knowledge, and together they collected some of the flowers to dry and keep. Their conversation flowed easily, full of laughter, questions, and gentle teasing. These moments, simple yet profound, strengthened the bond that had begun in the fire that had brought them together. As they worked together, they began to understand each other in ways words could not capture. The rancher recognized her courage, resilience, and curiosity, qualities that reminded him of the strength needed to survive on the plains. The girl saw his patience, wisdom, and unwavering calm, qualities that reassured her and made her feel safe. Each day they learned from each other, discovering new skills, new knowledge, and new aspects of themselves. In the quiet of shared work, they built a partnership rooted in respect and admiration. Nighttime brought another layer of connection. Sitting under the stars, they would sometimes remain in companionable silence, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. The girl would point out constellations she had learned from her father, while the rancher shared stories about the stars he had observed throughout his life on the plains. They marveled at the vastness of the sky, feeling small yet connected to something much larger. In these quiet moments, the trust and understanding between them deepened further, creating a bond that was both comforting and inspiring. One day the rancher noticed that the girl was struggling with one of the chores, lifting heavy sacks of feed to the barn. He immediately came to her aid, showing her a method that made the task easier. She followed his guidance carefully, her confidence growing with each attempt. When she successfully completed the task on her own, her eyes sparkled with pride, and the rancher smiled warmly. He realized that these small victories were as meaningful as the larger tasks they accomplished together. They were building not just skills, but character, confidence, and mutual respect. Over time, the girl began to confide in the rancher more openly, She shared her dreams of exploring the world beyond the plains, her hopes for her family, and her desire to learn more about the ways of both her people and the rancher's world. The rancher listened carefully, offering guidance without imposing his own beliefs. He encouraged her to dream, to grow, and to pursue her goals while remaining grounded in the lessons of the land and the importance of kindness, courage, and perseverance. In this sharing, their relationship became deeper and more meaningful, grounded in emotional understanding and mutual support. The father observed these moments quietly, his heart warmed by the way his daughter had flourished. He saw her confidence grow, her laughter return after the fear of the fire, and the genuine care the rancher had for her well-being. He began to trust him completely, seeing in him a man of integrity who had become an essential part of their lives. The father's approval was quiet but steady, a reflection of the bond that had developed naturally, without force or expectation. Through all of these experiences, the rancher and the girl began to develop a profound understanding of each other. They anticipated each other's thoughts and actions, communicated through gestures and expressions, and supported each other in ways that transcended words. Their bond was not yet romantic, but it was deep, meaningful, and full of potential. It was a connection forged through shared work, shared knowledge, and shared experiences. A connection that had grown naturally from trust, respect, and admiration. By the end of the summer, their partnership had become an integral part of daily life. The rancher and the girl worked together seamlessly, their movements coordinated, their understanding implicit. They had created a small world of companionship, learning, and mutual support. A world that brought out the best in each of them. The girl had grown more confident, skilled, and self-assured, while the rancher had found joy, purpose, and a sense of connection that he had never expected. As the sun set over the plains, casting long shadows across the fields, the rancher and the girl sat together on a hill overlooking the cattle. The wind carried the scent of grass and wildflowers, and the sky blazed with colors of orange and pink. They spoke quietly of their day, of the work completed, and of the discoveries made. In that serene moment, neither needed to speak of what their bond had become. It was evident in the way they shared tasks, laughter, and quiet understanding. The fire that had brought them together months ago had sparked something far greater, a friendship built on trust, respect, and the promise of something more profound in the days to come. The days had grown longer, and the heat of summer now blanketed the plains. The rancher and the Apache girl had spent months together, their days filled with work, learning, and quiet moments of companionship. The fire that had once brought them together was now only a memory, but the bond it had sparked had grown stronger with every shared task, every lesson, and every laugh. The rancher noticed the way the girl's eyes sparkled with curiosity and determination, and he realized that her presence had changed his life in ways he could not have imagined. For the first time in years, he felt truly connected to someone, not just through work or duty, but through a deep, mutual understanding. That morning began like any other. The sun was just rising, casting soft golden light across the fields, and the rancher was checking on the cattle. The girl rode beside him, moving confidently in the saddle, her laughter mingling with the calls of the birds. She was teaching herself new skills every day, and he watched with quiet pride as she guided her horse with skill and precision. The father worked nearby, repairing a fence, occasionally looking up to see his daughter and the rancher laughing together. The scene was peaceful, a perfect snapshot of life on the plains. Yet beneath the calm, something was shifting. Both the rancher and the girl had begun to feel emotions that went beyond friendship and admiration, though neither had yet spoken them aloud. Later that afternoon, they decided to take a break near the river that ran through the plains. The water sparkled under the sun, and the sound of its gentle flow provided a soothing backdrop to the warm day. The girl sat on a rock by the riverbank, dipping her hands into the cool water, while the rancher settled beside her. For a long time they sat in comfortable silence, watching the river move slowly past, listening to the calls of distant birds, and feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces. It was in these quiet moments that they felt most connected, where words were not needed to convey their growing affection. The girl turned to the rancher, her eyes serious but soft. "I've been thinking about something," she said quietly. He looked at her, sensing the weight in her tone. "What is it?" he asked gently, his voice calm and steady, as always. She took a deep breath, her fingers tracing patterns in the water, as if drawing courage from the river itself. "You saved me. You saved my father. And you've been with us ever since. You've taught me so much, and you've helped me feel safe again. I don't know how to say this, but I think my heart, it belongs to you." The rancher was momentarily taken aback. He had felt a growing closeness with her, a deep affection, but hearing her words spoken aloud stirred something profound within him. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the honesty, vulnerability, and trust reflected in her eyes. His chest tightened, and for a moment he could hardly find words. Finally, he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I never expected this," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "But I feel the same way. My heart, it belongs to you too." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy, relief, and hope. She smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face, and in that moment, the bond between them shifted, becoming something deeper, something that neither had anticipated, but both had longed for, without realizing it. The rancher squeezed her hand gently, feeling the warmth and trust in her grip. They sat together by the river, the quiet sounds of nature surrounding them, feeling a connection that went far beyond friendship or gratitude. It was love born of shared experience, courage, and care. Over the next few days, their relationship grew even stronger. The rancher found himself looking forward to the girl's laughter, her questions, and her presence in ways that filled his heart with warmth. The girl, in turn, felt a sense of safety and happiness she had not known since before the fire. She trusted him completely, not just with her life, but with her heart. Their conversations became more personal, filled with shared hopes, dreams, and gentle teasing that brought laughter and joy to their days. They were careful, respectful, and aware of the bond they had formed, allowing it to grow naturally without rushing or forcing anything. The father noticed the change, and though he initially worried about the depth of their emotions, he soon recognized the sincerity and goodness in the rancher's heart. He saw how carefully the rancher treated his daughter, how he respected her opinions, encouraged her independence, and protected her well-being. Slowly, the father's cautious approval turned into quiet support, and he began to see the relationship as a source of happiness and stability for his daughter. He realized that the rancher had not only saved their lives, but had also become an essential part of their family. One evening, the rancher and the girl were repairing a fence near the edge of the plains. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and purple. The air was warm, but the breeze carried the first hints of approaching night. They worked together silently for a while, their movements synchronized and natural, a reflection of the trust and understanding they had developed over months. When the task was complete, they sat down on a nearby rock, watching the colors of the sunset reflect across the fields. The girl rested her head on the rancher's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of his presence, and he rested his arm around her, feeling the gentle pulse of her heartbeat. "I never thought I could feel like this again," she whispered softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. After the fire, after all we went through, I thought the fear would never go away. But now I feel safe, happy, and loved." The rancher tightened his arm gently around her, feeling the same emotions swell in his chest. "You've given me more than you know," he said, his voice steady but full of feeling. "You've given me hope, joy, and love. I can't imagine my life without you now." The days that followed were filled with quiet joy and shared moments. They worked together on the ranch, but also took time to enjoy each other's company in ways that went beyond chores or lessons. They explored hidden trails along the river, watched sunsets from high hills, and shared meals prepared over small fires in the evening. They laughed easily, teased gently, and found comfort in each other's presence. Every touch, every glance, every word strengthened the bond that had begun in the fire and now blossomed into something lasting and profound. The girl's admiration for the rancher continued to grow. She loved his patience, his strength, and the gentle way he guided her without ever diminishing her independence. She admired how he respected her culture, listened to her stories, and learned from her experiences. In return, the rancher was drawn to her courage, intelligence, and the quiet wisdom that shone through her young eyes. He saw a spirit that was strong, resilient, and compassionate, a spirit that matched his own values and dreams. As the summer days waned and the first hints of autumn appeared, the bond between the rancher and the girl had become unshakable. Their connection was no longer simply a friendship or a teacher-student relationship. It was a love forged in fire, strengthened by shared experiences, and nurtured by trust, respect, and kindness. They had discovered that love could grow naturally from compassion and courage, and that the deepest bonds often began in moments of danger and selflessness. The father, watching from a distance, felt a sense of relief and pride. He had seen his daughter grow in confidence, happiness, and strength, and he knew that the rancher had played a vital role in her transformation. The bond between them was genuine, respectful, and built on a foundation of trust. He quietly gave his blessing, recognizing that the love between his daughter and the rancher was not fleeting, but deep and meaningful. One quiet evening, the girl sat by the riverbank, watching the reflections of the stars in the water. The rancher joined her, sitting beside her in comfortable silence. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "I never imagined I could feel this way," she said softly. "But now I know my heart is yours." The rancher squeezed her hand gently, his own heart full of emotion. "And mine is yours," he replied. They sat together, watching the river, feeling the depth of their connection and the promise of a future built on love, trust, and shared experience. From that day forward, their relationship deepened naturally. They continued to work together, laugh together, and learn from each other. But now there was an added layer of intimacy and understanding. They spoke openly about their dreams and fears, supported each other through challenges, and celebrated every small victory together. The love that had quietly grown over months of shared work, lessons, and courage had now been spoken aloud, solidifying the bond between them. The plains around them stretched endlessly, beautiful and wild, reflecting the openness and honesty of their connection. The rancher and the girl had discovered a love born from bravery, compassion, and trust, a love that could withstand challenges and grow stronger with time. They had faced fear, learned together, and built a partnership that was as enduring as the land itself. And as they sat together under the vast sky, hands intertwined, hearts open, they knew that the fire that had brought them together had ignited something far greater, a lifelong bond of love, respect, and unwavering connection. With the confession spoken and hearts open, life on the plains took on a new light. The rancher and the Apache girl worked side by side, but now there was a quiet joy in every glance, every smile, and every shared task. The bond that had begun in the fire and grown through months of trust and learning had now transformed into a deep, abiding love. Each day they spent together reinforced the connection between them, and it was clear to anyone who watched that they had become inseparable. The rancher continued his work on the land, tending to cattle, repairing fences, and managing the daily demands of ranch life. The girl was always nearby, now riding with confidence, carrying out chores with skill, and lending a hand wherever needed. Their partnership was seamless, a reflection of mutual respect, care, and understanding. They laughed together as they worked, their voices carrying across the plains, mixing with the sounds of birds and wind. Every shared task, from mending fences to moving cattle, became an opportunity to deepen their bond, a way to learn from each other and grow stronger together. The girl's father watched with pride and relief. His daughter had blossomed under the rancher's guidance and friendship, and now he could see the love that had grown between them. The rancher had not only saved their lives, but had helped them rebuild, heal, and thrive. The father respected him deeply, recognizing the kindness, integrity, and devotion that the rancher showed daily. He began to rely on the rancher in small ways, consulting him about land management, repairs, and even decisions about the herd. In this way, the rancher became part of the family, not just a friend or protector, but a trusted partner in every sense. The girl and the rancher found moments of quiet intimacy amidst the work. Sometimes, after a long day in the sun, they would sit together under a tree, sharing water and simple meals while watching the cattle graze. Other times, they would walk along the riverbank, talking about dreams for the future, the lessons they had learned from the land, and the lives they wanted to build together. In these moments, they discovered that love was not just about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about shared experiences, mutual support, and being present for each other every day. The bond between them grew even stronger during challenges. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the plains, with heavy rain and gusty winds threatening the cattle and their newly repaired fences. The rancher and the girl worked tirelessly together, securing animals, reinforcing fences, and moving supplies to safe areas. They encouraged each other, laughed through the chaos, and found ways to make the hard work enjoyable. By the time the storm passed, they were exhausted, soaked to the skin, but the shared struggle had brought them even closer. They sat together afterward, wrapped in blankets by a fire, smiling and feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. It was in moments like these that their love showed its strength. Steady, reliable, and resilient, the girl's confidence and independence continued to grow. She learned how to handle difficult situations with courage and composure, whether it was calming frightened animals or making decisions about the work on the land. The rancher encouraged her growth, celebrating her successes and gently guiding her when mistakes were made. He treated her as an equal, respecting her ideas and valuing her input. Through this approach, the girl learned not only practical skills, but also the importance of self-belief, perseverance, and kindness. She realized that love could exist alongside independence, and that trust and respect were the foundation of any meaningful relationship. Over time, their relationship became a source of inspiration for the small community around them. Neighbors and other ranchers noticed the bond, admiring the way the girl and the rancher supported each other. They saw the genuine affection in the way they worked, laughed, and cared for one another. And the story of how the rancher had saved the girl and her father became a tale of courage, kindness, and love. People marveled not just at the dramatic rescue, but at the way it had led to a lasting connection, built on trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect. One warm evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, the rancher and the girl took a walk along a familiar trail, the soft earth underfoot and the scent of wild flowers in the air. They talked about the future, about dreams for a life together, and about the home they wanted to create on the plains. The girl's hand rested in his, and there was a quiet understanding between them, a sense that whatever challenges came their way, they would face them together. They spoke softly about their hopes, laughed at shared memories, and found comfort in the silence that sometimes accompanied them. It was a peaceful moment, a reflection of how far they had come from the days of fear and uncertainty. The rancher had also grown in unexpected ways. He had always known the value of hard work and honesty, but through his time with the girl and her family, he had learned the deeper meanings of patience, compassion, and emotional connection. He realized that saving a life was only the beginning. Nurturing it, supporting it, and building a life together required ongoing effort, love, and understanding. The girl had taught him as much as he had taught her, showing him the strength of character, courage, and wisdom that could exist even in someone so young. Together, they had become better, stronger, and more resilient people. As autumn approached, the plains took on a golden hue, the grasses swaying gently in the cool breeze. The rancher and the girl continued their work, but also took time to enjoy the beauty around them. They would ride to high hills to watch the sun rise, explore the edges of the river, or sit quietly under trees, letting the world move around them. These moments, simple yet profound, reinforced the depth of their connection. They learned that life's greatest joys were often found not in grand events, but in shared experiences, quiet moments, and the daily rhythms of life lived together. The girl's father watched these developments with a calm satisfaction. He had seen his daughter grow into a confident, capable, and happy young woman. He had observed the rancher's unwavering support and genuine love for her, and he knew that his daughter was in good hands. The fire that had once threatened their lives had not only tested them, but had also revealed the strength, resilience, and courage in each of them. The father felt pride, relief, and gratitude for the life they had rebuilt together. Over time, the rancher and the girl began planning a future together. They discussed their hopes for a home, for managing the land, and for building a family rooted in love, respect, and shared values. They dreamed together, planned together, and imagined a life that blended their experiences, cultures, and strengths. The bond that had begun in fire, courage, and trust had grown into a foundation for a lifetime, strong enough to withstand challenges, changes, and the passage of time. One crisp morning, as the first hints of winter touched the plains, the rancher and the girl stood together on a hill overlooking the land they had tended, cared for, and loved. The sun reflected off the grasses, casting a golden glow over everything. The girl leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her, feeling the warmth, trust, and love between them. "We've come so far," she whispered, her voice soft but full of meaning. "From fear to hope, from loss to love. I'm so grateful for everything." The rancher nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "And I'm grateful for you," he said. "You've changed my life as much as I've changed yours. Together, we've built something lasting, something real." Their love story, born in a moment of danger, had blossomed into a life filled with trust, respect, and shared joy. The rancher and the girl had discovered that true love was not only about passion or grand gestures, but about the everyday moments, working together, learning together, protecting each other, and sharing laughter and quiet reflection. Their hearts had found each other through courage, kindness, and the willingness to give and receive trust. The plains stretched endlessly around them, golden in the light of the late afternoon sun. The rancher and the girl had not only survived the fire, but had built a life that honored courage, friendship, and love. They were partners in every sense, supporting each other through work, life, and the quiet moments that mattered most. Their story was one of bravery, resilience, and the transformative power of human connection. As evening fell, they returned to the cabin, now fully repaired and filled with warmth and laughter. The father welcomed them with a smile, knowing that his daughter was happy, safe, and loved. The rancher felt a sense of completion, not from wealth or recognition, but from the simple, profound joy of having built a life with someone who mattered deeply. Together they sat by the fire, sharing a meal, recounting stories, and dreaming of the future. In that moment, the plains were more than land. They were a home, a place of love, and a testament to the power of courage, kindness, and enduring connection. And so, life on the plains continued, full of challenges, work, and simple joys, but also filled with laughter, love, and hope. The rancher and the Apache girl had found each other in the most unexpected of circumstances, and together they had created a life that honored both their experiences and their hearts. From the fire that had threatened their lives to the quiet moments of shared work and laughter, they had discovered the true meaning of love, a bond forged through courage, nurtured by trust, and strengthened by every shared day. In the end, they knew that no matter what the future held, their hearts were joined forever, and every sunset, every starry night, every gentle breeze across the plains would remind them of the journey they had taken, from fear to safety, from strangers to companions, and from gratitude to love. Their story was one of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection, a story that would live on in their hearts forever.